Hi, Year 11. So I promised that I would do a little quick video to talk you through our sort of methods for the English language paper. So remember those stages we talked about. I would, even when you sit down, kind of write them down, because it will be a good reminder that this is the first sort of 10-15 minutes of the exam for you. So the first thing we do is we read the text really carefully, and if we need to read it twice, we've got time for that. Second thing, just establish like that you're clear. What is it about? What's the text about? So for the T-Rex text, what was it about? It was about a group of explorers time traveling backwards in time, hoping to hunt and shoot a T-Rex. When they come face to face with the T-Rex, that fear sort of takes hold, and they end up being the ones subjected to that attack until the very final sentence when the T-Rex falls. What is it about in terms of kind of creative reading and writing and exploring that? It's about fear. It's about the terror created by this creature. Some of you made really good points. It links nicely to the prelude, and it is about the fear in the face of nature of man. And it is about an exploration of maybe that kind of that feeling that the men have at the beginning of being almost of them, sorry, I've totally lost my words there, of them being almost kind of so fearless that nothing will stand in their way. And obviously they're surprised to learn that in the face of a T-Rex, they are insignificant little men that are crushed like berries, that hideous kind of simile. So what is it all about? Establish that you are clear about what the text's about. Then, when you're reading the text, highlight some interesting things to do with the language, highlight some interesting things to do with the structure, and finally box up the text so that you have got a potential spine for question 5. If you do those first things, I think it settles you into having a really good understanding about the text. And then if you've got those things all recorded and annotated, you've got points to make for question 2, which is going to be about language, points to make for question 3, which is going to be about structure, points that you can use for question 4, which is going to combine your notes on language and structure. And then if you boxed it up, you have got brilliant spine for writing question 5. So let's have a look at that in practice. I'm literally going to look at a new text with you and show you how I would do it. I'm sorry I don't have a colourful pen on me. I'm just going to do it with normal pen, but let's have a look. While I'm reading, I'm going to be thinking my initial reading about language and about structure. Extracts from the beginning of a novel by Graham Joyce. I need to circle that. Beginning's interesting. So the exposition, the start of the novel, when things are hopefully being kind of set in place for action to come. But the opening, remember from all of your work in Year 9 about what openings are supposed to do, the beginning of a novel, it's supposed to introduce us to things, it's supposed to start with us posed with questions, it's supposed to do all of those things. So when you get this little blurb, do take note of what it tells you, because it's going to be significant, and that is significant for structure, isn't it? Definitely. A young married couple, Zoe and Jake, are on a skiing holiday in the French Pyrenean Mountains. So we've got the context of who our two central characters are. We've got Zoe and Jake, and something's going to happen on this ski holiday in the French Pyrenean Mountains. Something must be going to happen, because a text will never be chosen where nothing happens. It was snowing again. Gentle six-pointed flakes from a picture book were settling on her jacket sleeve. The mountain air prickled with ice and the smell of pine resin. Several hundred meters below lay the dark outline of Saint Bernard en Haute, a Pyrenean resort village across the west irregular peaks of the mountain range. So already I'm starting like prickling irregularity, a dark outline. Yeah, have we already got, in terms of structure, maybe a sort of foreshadowing or a sense of foreboding? It's already kind of making me feel that way. Is it a little bit ominous? I would start like that. If I'm boxing this up, we've got the establishment of the setting. Zoe pulled the air into her lungs. That's a weird way of describing someone breathing in. Feeling the crackling cold of it before letting go. Interesting bit of alliteration I might come back to. And when the mountain seemed to nod and sigh back at her, personification, she almost thought she could die in that place, and happily. If there are few moments in life that come as clear and as pure as ice, when the mountain breathed back at her, Zoe knew that she'd trapped one such moment, and it could never be taken away. Everywhere was snow and silence. Quite like that. Interesting. Snow and silence, repetition, and the complete arrest of life, a rehearsal and a pre-echo of death. She pointed her skis down the hill. They looked like weird talons of brilliant red and gold in the powder snow as she waited, ready to swoop. I am alive. I am an eagle. So again, if we're boxing up at the same time, we've got setting, we've then got kind of a focus on the character and their feelings. There, she knows how she feels, that if she could have trapped one moment, it could never be taken away. So that's kind of this next section here. The sun was up now. In a few minutes, there would be more skiers to break the eerie morning spell. But right now, they had the snow and the morning entirely to themselves. So there's like a refocus here on the narrative. We return to kind of what's going on in the here and now. There was a whisper behind her. There was an effortless track of Jake's skis as he came across the ridge and caught up with her. A whisper as kind of the sound of his skis is interesting. This is perfection. You ready to go? Yeah, let's do it. They'd got up early to beat the holiday-making hordes for this first run of the morning, because this, the tranquility, the silence, the undisturbed snow, and the feeling proximity to the eagle's flight was what it was all about. Jake hit the west side of the steep but broad slope, and she took the east, carving matching parallel tracks through the fresh snow. There's a lot of this kind of idea of prickling, carving, pulling. Interesting in terms of maybe a semantic field. Also, if I'm talking structure a little bit more over here, we've definitely got some shifts going on. So here, this is sort of an interruption. So that could be classed as a shift in perspective. You've also got maybe a bit of a shift here from dialogue into kind of the narration again and the description. But at the edge of the slope near the curtain of trees, she felt a small slab of snow slip from beneath her. Right, there is a definite shift if we've got a but in terms of structure. I think that's interesting. And in terms of boxing up, we've got the establishment maybe here of some form of threat. It was like she'd been bucked. So she took the fall line to recover her balance. Before she dropped 300 meters, the whisper of her skis was replaced by a rumble. Okay, interesting. Here, I'm just refocusing the visualizer so you can definitely see what I'm annotating here. Okay, so there we've got the threats intensifying. Zoe saw at the periphery of her vision that Jake had come to a halt at the side of the piste and was looking back up the slope. Irritated by the false start they'd made, she etched a few turns before skidding to a halt and turning to look back at her. To look back at her husband. Sorry. The rumble became louder. Okay, so if I'm boxing up, tension increase here, like the threat is becoming closer. There was a pillar of what looked like grey smoke unfurling, and silky banners, I like the language here, at the head of the slope, like the heraldry of armies. Nice simile. It was beautiful. It made her smile. Then a smile iced over. Another massive seismic shift in tone. Right, his smile iced over. Have we got a turning point here? Jake was speeding straight towards her. His face was rubberized. That's really interesting choice of word. And he mouthed something as he flew at her. Get to the side, to the side. She knew now that it was an avalanche. Okay, so what's going on here? We have got kind of the tension increase, absolutely. Structurally here, we've definitely got this, interruption again and pace quickening. If you think about all of those things that we look at in terms of structure. Then we've got this massive dense paragraph. So let's have a look at what goes on here. The rumbling had become a roaring in her ears, drowning Jake's words. She pushed herself down the fall line, scrambling for traction, trying to accelerate away from the roaring cloud breaking behind her like a tsunami at sea. Jagged black cracks appeared in the snow in front of her. She angled the skis towards the edge of the slope, heading for the trees, but it was too late. She saw Jake's black suit go bundling past her as she was turned by the great mass of smoke and snow. Sorry, as he was turned. Then she too was punched off her feet and carried through the air, twisting, spinning, turning in the whiteout. She remembered something about spreading her arms around her head. A few moments, it was like being agitated inside a washing machine, turned head over heels a few times until at last she was dumped heavily in a rib-cracking fall. Then there came a chattering noise, like the amplified jaws of a million termites chewing on wood. Ooh, I might magnify that, like that. The noise itself filled her ears and muffled everything, and then there was silence, and total whiteness faded to grey and then to black. Right, well, we end with silence, or like a focus here on like a lack of sound. That's maybe an interesting end. We're left on this cliffhanger, aren't we? But in terms of the boxing up that I'm going over here, so we've got the tension increase and it reaches like, that's our climactic moment where she's in the avalanche. Absolute climactic moment leading on to silence. So I've read it and that's taken me, you know, a good kind of 8 minutes or so, but that's fine because now I am totally prepped. I've got some things that I've noticed about the language. I've got some interesting things that I've noticed about the structure. I've also boxed it up already. So my kind of spine is established setting, focus on a character and their feelings in that setting has been quite calm. Focus on the sort of return to the narrative, so maybe more about that setting, and then a threat. I guess I should have had here actually like a hint at a threat near the curtain, so hint of a threat. And then the threat increases with the tension and intensifies. And then we've got a climactic moment and then silence. I could definitely use that structure in my question 5. If I've got all of that, okay, I'm just going to go back to this. I've read the text. I'm clear what it's about. Am I clear what it's about? There's a couple, they're skiing and they kind of ski into a terrifying threat and are caught in this kind of snowstorm avalanche. Have I annotated some language features? Absolutely. Have I commented on structure? And have I got a spine for question 5? I've done that. And I know I'm on 11 minutes of the video, but I probably started a couple of minutes in. So I've got all of that in 10 minutes. It just means then that when I start looking at the questions, I'm ready. Right, lines 1 to 5. So I go back to just lines 1 to 5, 4 things about Zoe's surroundings from this part of the source. For this question, always remember you start with Zoe's surroundings are, or the surroundings are, or the surroundings are presented as or feel. Start, write full sentences, only lines 1 to 5. You're good with that. Give it a go if you want, but you don't have to. It was just showing you that question. Question 2, you're given the extract to look at. How does the writer use language here to describe Zoe's feelings? Okay, so I go back to my annotations. How is language being used to show her feelings? If there are few moments in life, right, what did I highlight initially as being interesting in terms of language? Right, snow and silence, that sibilant repetition I thought was really interesting, but what else could we focus on? So we've got snow and silence, and that absolutely creating a sense of that kind of ominous feeling, that creeping sort of cold realization. A rest of life is interesting to me, a pre-echo of death. And they look like weird talons of a bright red and gold in the powder snow, right? Red and gold. I'm kind of thinking here of her sort of having the power of an animal, and to sort of make her seem as though she is absolutely fearless, like some eagle, but with this kind of hesitation and apprehension. So she feels bold, but she feels sort of that there's this slight undercurrent of kind of anxiety and tension. She feels really, really happy that life is clear and pure as ice, but that she trapped one such moment and it could never be taken away. There's almost that feeling, if there's perfection in a moment, what's going to come next? So that the language there's loads to talk about. I've just highlighted a couple of things, but it's all about how it represents her feelings. So you've got plenty to go on for question 2. For question 3, have you got plenty to go on and on? Question 3. The whole of the source, all of it from beginning to end. It's from the beginning of the novel, we know, and this is your question about structure. How has the writer structured the text to interest you? Well, we've already talked about this, right? The whole text is structured with a crescendo, a building of intensity and kind of tension, and a building of that kind of feeling of despair. So we start with some quite subtle foreshadowing and an ominous sort of setting. We're then interrupted with a shift to slight intensification. Shift again, and this is maybe our turning point. She felt a small slab of snow. The hint at that threat is in a boxing up. I've got all of my kind of comments that I can draw on here about the kind of intensification. So how has the writer structured the text? Well, your initial point is that it's been structured to build and build in intensity. So then you've just got to kind of use your examples. Where are your moments where all of those shifts are occurring and that tension is increasing? How is the structure creating that feeling? And what's the impact on you as a reader? Your final question, just getting my pages all muddled here, is question 4. Focus this part of your answer on the second part of the source. So only line 28 to the end. Remember my recommendation? Grab your pen and just box off this section that you're going to look at, 28 to the end, which goes over to your second page. All of that section. Right, a student said, in this part of the story where Zoe and Jake are caught in the avalanche, I can't believe Zoe's so slow to react to the warning signs, because in the end, the situation sounds really dangerous. To what extent do you agree? Okay, well, we agree. Yes, she is slow to react to the warning signs. And it does sound really dangerous, but there may be a reason for her being slow to react to the warning signs. Is she in shock? Is she so surprised? Does time slow down when we are in that sort of real sense of danger? So I can't believe Zoe is so slow to react. To what extent do you agree? You maybe agree to a certain extent that she is slow to react, but we can believe it because it is a really dangerous situation, and perhaps she, is lost for what to do and she doesn't know how to overcome that. What do you do for question 4? You go back and look at your notes for language and structure and look specifically for evidence that she's slow to react, that there are warning signs, and that the situation sounds really dangerous. So you go back and have a look. Remember, it's telling you just to look at line 28 to the end. So here we go. Before she dropped 300 meters, the whisper of her skis was replaced by a rumble. So that kind of intensification. She's got something in the periphery of her vision. She's irritated by it. So there's something kind of niggling at her, but there's that repetition of the rumble. There's some really interesting things going on here in terms of language and structure, which would help you to kind of consider the fact that she is maybe slow to react because it's happening incrementally, it's happening slowly until we get to line 36. It was beautiful. It made her smile, and her smile iced over. And everything kind of speeds up in terms of pace. So do you agree that she is slow to react, or is it until she has that kind of moment of realization and then she becomes quite quick to react, but it's too late? Again, question 4 really relies on you having done all of that prep work, but if you've done the prep work, it becomes quite an easy one to tackle. And again, we've done practice of that in class. Have a go of it if you wish. And then the writing section. So this is what the writing section for this paper would have looked like. So you'd be asked to contribute some creative writing for the school's website, or write about a magical world suggested by this picture. Use your boxed up structure that you put together. So if you're going to place your character in a magical world suggested by this picture, okay, put your character that you've been using since the start of year 10 into this particular setting. Are they going to be inside the snow globe? Are they going to be looking on at this kind of girl? Are they going to be associated with her in some way? Is that just your springboard starting point? But you've got a spine. Focus on the setting, then focus on the character and their feelings as they look into that snow globe. Is it going to transport them and time travel them, or is it going to bring back a memory or an anecdote? Is it going to be something that was precious in their childhood? Focus on that description, and then some sort of maybe hint or threat intensifies some sort of terrible memory associated with that object. There's going to be an increase in tension. Maybe somebody else comes in, and the climactic moment when a revelation occurs followed by total silence. That kind of structure will work for you looking at that image. Or describe a place you think is beautiful. I think that's a great question. Again, you've got that spine. Can you place your character into somewhere that is so beautiful that it is almost kind of terrifying? Like Wordsworth in the Prelude. Could you place your character into a situation where something very, very beautiful suddenly becomes a little bit kind of disarming? You could definitely place the characters you've written about for me so far in that kind of setting. And that spine that you created in the first 8-9 minutes will allow you to do that. So I can't emphasize enough how much I totally believe in that method, because we're now like 18 minutes into a video, I know, but that's kind of 10-15 minutes sets you up for all of the other questions. I've spent a bit of time kind of talking to you about the other questions since we did that. That all puts it in place. Talk to some of your other teachers. I've talked to some of the other GCSE teachers who've suggested slightly different methods. Things like maybe do question 1, having just read the lines it concerns, and get that one done and get 4 marks in the bag and get yourself settled, and then come back and do this. You can go with it that way if you would prefer. Get going with the exam and get 4 marks in the bag. Just do question 1 first, because it asks you to look at particular lines, and then come back to doing all of this. But I think you need the whole text read and some points made about these things, language and structure, and it boxed up, in order to then be able to write your the responses for the rest of the paper. And once that's all in place, it kind of makes the rest of the paper a lot more easy to kind of access. What you're thinking about then is how you're going to write really brilliant extended analysis kind of paragraphs, or a really brilliant creative piece, and you're not trying to think back and kind of plan when you come up to those questions, because you've got a lot of ideas in place already. Anyway, said I would do this. I hope it's helpful. I will, yeah, I'll look at anything that you want to show me as well after we have done this. Okay, thank you.